Hi, I'm Laurice. I'm a film director.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I'm a filmmaker. You were taught to us in film school, so it's a pleasure to finally meet you today. So, how did you start getting into filmmaking?
I started out as a student of Nestor Torre and Rolando Tino in the Communication Arts Masteral program in Ateneo. And I decided to go into what was then called radio, television, film, or the electronic arts, because it was like new at that time. This was way back in 1966.
Oh, wow.
Were you born then? So, and then because of that, I went into theater. And then Nestor Torre made his first film called Crush Ko Sister, and I appeared in that film. So that was my entry into the movies as an actress. And lots of other things. I was a dubber for premiere productions for films that they shot in Tagalog and dubbed into English for the US. Then I met Lino Broca, who got me as an actress. Eventually, there were just too few good roles, and I was thinking, instead of waiting till I was 40 to direct my first film, I decided in 1981 to try directing films. So that's how I got wind into film directing.
Would you say that, getting into filmmaking was a reaction to the lack that you were seeing in cinema?
Yes. Reaction to the lack, and I was considered a serious actress because I came from the theater, and at the time they called it a legitimate theater, and also because the roles I played were serious characters, thinking characters, not the usual, teeny boppers and pang-idol.
Mature roles.
Yeah, more mature. Even when I was younger, they were the more mature roles. So I was thinking, and also at that time, all the directors except for one, Rosa Mia made a film earlier but didn't really stay in films too long, or Susana de Guzman. And then there was just one, Maria Saret, who did action films, that her films were just like the films of all the other guys.
Yeah.
There were about 60 plus or 70 film directors, and only one female.
Yeah.
I'm just simplifying. It's male and female at that time.
Yes.
So so I went into directing, and I didn't let that bother me. I didn't let it scare me. But I did feel I had some friction, a little bit of friction with one of my technical staff, because there was this, I suppose,
Ego?
that there was this woman and there was this actress. I mean, maybe because she was a good actress, she can direct actresses. She can direct her actors, but hello, all the rest of it, So I had some friction there. But I always fought for what I wanted because, before I started, I had the movie in my mind already.
Yeah.
So I just knew exactly what I wanted. So, and then the next hurdle was when it was shown.
Yeah.
And
was there a lot of pressure, like when it was about to come out?
yes, because, if it flops in the box office, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we had a preview in what used to be Magnatech Studios before, and people liked it. The critics liked it, and it did well in the box office. Luckily for me, for my first film, so I was in.
Yes.
And at that time, Marilu Diaz-Abaya was always doing her film. She was just ahead of me by a month or so. So there were just the two of us as against the macho men. But going back to your question, the lack of roles for women, because you see, the film industry at that time was dominated by the males. So you saw a machismo, the macho point of view. So the women were really like objects.
Yes.
They're beautiful.
Yes.
They were creatures to be wooed and won. Very set roles, but none of the women with the women's issues were never addressed and clarified. So, so that was, I found at that time, okay, this is at least something that I could do.
Yes, or something that you wanted to say.
Yeah,
same.
at that time.
Yeah, I think, with my films, it's the same, but also for the LGBTQ plus community, because like what you said about women is exactly how I feel about the lack of representation of the community in Filipino media. And I think representation is so important because growing up, right, like whatever you see on screen, that's what the truth is, or that's how you should be, or people's ideas of what people should be like. And growing up, I didn't think I was gay because I didn't see any queer women that I could identify with in media. And so I wanted to change that for the generation after me.
But do you feel that you, at this stage of your career, that you want to maybe see something beyond that horizon, that's something that beyond clarifying the LGBT issues and so on?
I get asked all the time.
Really?
By entertainment press. And you know how entertainment press is. Bakit gay film na naman yung ginagawa mo? And it's funny because like the last time I was asked that was in the Q Cinema press con, and I was seated beside a male director who did a lot of, male-female rom-coms. And I didn't see them asking him why he was doing another straight film. Like why are you asking me this
like
question?
You were limiting yourself.
Yes. I mean, I always say that I'm open to doing any kind of film, but if I had to write a film and spend my time and energy bringing this thing to life, I might as well spend my time and energy giving voices to those who don't get represented that often. But I'm open to telling all kinds of stories.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess, using your voice where it's needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With me, I guess that's a good point there, because for so many years it was like up until the turn of up until 2000, just before 2000. My films were really the female point of view.
Yeah.
And when you say female point of view, it really, because you play a particular female, therefore you have to create a particular type of male.
Yes.
Not a prototype, but I mean a particular type of male that is vulnerable.
Yes.
That responds to women, that is sensitive, because that was those you didn't find them in the films before Marilu and I entered show business.
And that's why, I don't know, like there are some people who still think that it doesn't matter what gender your director is, but I always say it matters.
It matters.
In the subtleties and the nuances, in the way they portray their characters, at the end of the day, I think it's still very important.
But, okay, I'm going to jump into what do I want to, I've been asking myself after Tanging Yaman and those films, the reason why I don't make as many films anymore. I'm thinking okay, to me, television is something that I practice because it's my profession.
Yes.
But film is really special because film is like a gem. It's just one in a 2-hour or 1.5-hour format. It's like a gem.
Yes.
And within that gem, you make a story, you make your statement, and
and it's powerful to see something that big.
Yes.
Yes.
So I haven't been doing that much, and I think maybe in this conversation with you, I'm asking myself the same question I asked you, and what do I want to do in the future? What other films would I like to do in the future? And I think I'd like to see how I can expand, at my age, because I think I've already done that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see.
Yes.
I'm happy to see all these women come in, and then all this, not just the women and men issues, the LGBT and all kinds of, and the whole independent landscape that has really liberalized everything. But within this context, where would I like to go? And I think I'd like to explore something more personal, more intimate, but at the same time more universal. And that's what I'm trying to. I think that's what I'll be
working on.
Yeah. In this business, in the movie business as an industry, if your films are liked, if your films are watched, if your films find an audience, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter. You don't get the feeling of disadvantage from the audience.
I also didn't feel disadvantaged. I think partially because of the work that you've done to get us to this point. But I could relate to when you said that there was so much pressure when you were gonna release your first film.
Yeah.
Because I also had that feeling that as a female queer filmmaker, that if my film didn't do well, I wouldn't get to tell stories anymore.
Yeah.
And I think us as females, we carry that more than male directors do. I think that there's so much pressure for us to do well, because if we don't do well, we'll not only jeopardize our careers, but the careers of other female.
So you feel that the machismo culture is still there?
I think I always hear people say the Philippine film industry is great because there are a lot of females in charge. But I always question the kinds of stories that, what kinds of females are you putting in power and what kinds of stories are they putting out there? Yeah. So it's not enough that you have women in charge. It's also what kind of women are they? What kinds of stories do they prioritize? Do they prioritize strong stories about strong, empowered women? I always say that, if I wasn't such a romantic, that I would just release all my films online right away. But I still believe in the power of seeing two women kiss in a 70-foot screen and the life-changing power of that image. But at the same time, as a filmmaker who makes the kinds of films that I do, I always ask myself which is more important. Do I want to see my film on the big screen, or do I want as much people as possible to be able to see it? And I think, that's the kinds of questions that we're confronted with now with all these different forms of media.
Yeah, those are really specific concerns. But me naman, from a sociological point of view, and what films, in a way, how films shape people and society, I think it really doesn't matter. It's important, and it's important for aspiring filmmakers, to make the films they want to make. And it's really fortunate that they have access to this now because of the technology. It's cheaper, and they can take their time if they run out of money. To me, whether you see it now or tomorrow, and this is my experience, and the reason behind my involvement in Cinemalaya was that for a while, our film industry was dying.
Yeah.
Because it was so prohibitive to make a film. During my time, and even as late as 15 years ago, it wasn't easy for anyone to break into the film industry. And because it was so expensive, and the producers didn't want to make too many risks. Therefore, the film industry didn't have new blood. It was just rehashing the same old stories, the same formulae, the same talents, the same directors. So it was slowly dying. That's one of the reasons. I'm not saying it's the only one, but I see it as very significant. It's important to encourage the new ones to make a film with your cell phone, whatever you have access with, just so you can communicate something. It's a language, and by communicating, other people who watch this will get a glimpse of what you are really thinking about, what's important to you, our culture. And it's the more diverse, the richer our culture. So I feel that, with this new technology, I think that more and more people should be encouraged to make the films that they want. Once you're there, once you're into that process, you get to ask the questions that you just asked. What is more important, projecting it on a 70-inch screen or,
a phone?
A phone?
Yeah.
But those are questions that those are questions that you, in the long run, you know, you make it as beautifully as you want, the best resolution that you can get, because eventually they will watch this film maybe on a big screen, or maybe in a small screen, or maybe in a library. But the important thing that you already get to express, you communicate what you want to.
I think also, aside from making the process so much cheaper and more available, it also democratizes the distribution. So, you know, like, I can create my own channel now and upload whatever films I want to upload on there without outside influences.
Yes.
And so that really, you know, changes
the landscape.
Because it's a more solitary process now. It's more like, I'm gonna go through this process by myself, and then when I release it to the world, that's when everyone else gets a say, versus the more traditional model.
Well, that's you know, there's no problem about that. The problem is when you know, you have to, you're already thinking, how do I recover so I can make my next film? When I was making this film, Ipagpatawad Mo, with Vilma Santos and Christopher De Leon, it was about a couple with an autistic child. And Audio Post asked me if I could just try doing my sound digitally. Try Audio Post for that. And I was able to convince my producer. I said, it's not the whole thing, just the sound. And, you know, it had very good feedback from my actors, because, wow, this is, you know, this is so new, this is so effortless, we can do it so quickly, and so on. And then I did the following film, everything was digital already. Post-production was digital. And then we transferred to film. And then came HD, and then I did Santa Santita. That was, you know, I did 2004. So I shot the whole thing digitally, and everything done digitally. And then, of course, we had to make copies because the theaters didn't have the digital projection yet. So I have always been always trying to convince my producers to go digital, because one of the things they said was, I think the producers would say, you know, we have the budget is exactly the same, or the light, you know, I mean, they haven't perfected it yet, and the light is kind of more, you know, it was not as brillo and so on. But anyway, we did it, and I was just, you know, this whole thing changed my whole way of thinking how I was going to make my films, because then the color grading. Gosh, you know, before you were just asked, you know, for the lab, you want it more red or more green? But this one, you could do wonders with color grading. Because of that, because we moved to digital, it liberalized again filmmaking, because it became more accessible for everyone. So there are a lot more people going into, because of that, a lot more people are becoming filmmakers.
In fact, that's when they say the independent film scene in the Philippines really started to get bigger, was when digital came in. I think on my end, aside from, because I haven't been through a lot of technological changes since I started filmmaking, but what really has changed is the way the audience consumes our films. So for example, you know, I make films for cinema, but then I also have to think about how my potential viewer is gonna see my first trailer. And so I'm gonna say, you know, you have to think about it in terms of, sa phone lang niya yan papanoorin. Kailangan mas attention grabbing. Kailangan sa first 6 seconds nandun ka na, kasi she's probably gonna watch it while she's on the MRT or walking on the street or watching something else. And so there are all these external factors that come into play in the filmmaking process that I guess, like, you know, what we talked about before, people come to the movies, I guess, with a bigger with more intention, because that's the only media they had. It's either film or TV. Those are the only two choices. But now you have so much screens in competition with your film, or eventually, if you're lucky, you're gonna end up in an online streaming platform, and people are gonna watch it through smaller screens. And so, it's more things to think about, I think. One of my favorite memories with my grandma was when she took me to watch Jungle Book in the movie theater. And more than the film, I remember being with her and watching it. And I think that's the power of cinema, is that it's a shared experience that you have with anyone. That you're in a theater and you laugh at the same time, and it just like affirms that you're not alone, because people like you find this thing funny, or like you cry at the same time.
Well, my earliest memories of film was when I suppose, I've always been conscious of film from forever, from as early as I can remember. And my mother says that she used to carry me to the neighborhood theater because, like, if she wanted to watch a film. And I don't suppose we had problems with censorship at that time. We didn't have the censorship at that time. And I remember the first time that I saw a local movie in color, and that was Ibong Adarna. I saw that in Butuan City, where I grew up. And also I remember the film that struck me, watching Rashomon in that same theater in Butuan City when I was 10 years old.
Rashomon was showing in
yes.
Butuan. Yeah.
I was 10 years old, and I remember, it was like black and white and strange characters, but it didn't matter because this was the magic of the moving images. It didn't matter what was showing. I just wanted to watch. And I remember this scene where the husband, it is all in the woods, and he's doing something, and then he's running away, and people laughing. And I thought, why are they laughing? So this film didn't have subtitles. It was in Japanese. But then I realized that there was so much power in images that you didn't need the spoken language. It was the moving images. And going to school eventually, this Krakauer says that it is image before sound. So I've always tried to practice that. I have to remember that I should visualize it more than hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or imagine a scene without dialogue.
Yes.
How would you portray it?
Because we may be speaking different languages, but the power of the image, can transcend language and cultures.
I think that's what I like most about films, is that they act as sort of a time capsule for a given time.
Yes.
So when I watch Ibong Adarna, I'm automatically transported back to when that was
time,
made. Yes. Or like if I watch something now that I know, was shot digitally, I'm brought back to this place and time, to the present.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to ask you what I asked you earlier.
Yes.
What films do you see yourself doing in distant time? So, what films would you like to do in the future? Because you're part of the cinema now, and your films are going to be part of what will mold and shape the future.
At the end of the day, I'm just hoping to continue what you started, like to keep making films that have women characters who have agency, who have control over their body, that gets to make their own choices, that aren't a prop, that inspire other women to be themselves and be who they are. In terms of what that's gonna look like and in what medium I'm gonna make that on is, it's gonna change from year to year, day to day. But I think, I hope to make films that, like you, have contributed to the bigger dialogue of Philippine cinema. And, I think it's also an interesting question to ask you, because you are the head of Cinemalaya and you get a say as to which films get made. So what are you looking for when it comes to giving filmmakers the chance to make a film?
I'm looking for something that gets me interested in a question or an issue, or questioning myself, or looking at something differently. it's part of, like, I suppose, enlightenment, making the consciousness larger, and challenging me to look ahead of myself. And I'm conscious that since I started back in the 70s, I directed my first film in the early 80s, that I'm here, but I want to be moving like a ship with this movement, forward. And I would like to I really look forward to see what lies ahead. And for you to be able to be on that ship, the balangay of Sinimalaya, is for you to be able to be sensitive as you are moving forward. I still feel that the old principle of that it's an examination of a human condition is the guide. That's how I view the Sinimalaya films. It's not something that has been copied. It's something that looks at something, at an issue differently, at the truth differently, and it gives it more dimension, and it expands your consciousness as a human being. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I hope that Philippine cinema gets more different kinds of stories told. It's not just a singular voice or a singular kind of film, and that more people get to see Filipino films.
Yes.
Regardless of what medium it's on.
Not just more Filipinos watching Filipino films,
but
the world.
Yeah.